so glad to have you on the call today. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm
Oh
excited.
my gosh. I am too. I am too. You have so much to talk about. For those who are watching who have followed my journey, I met Deanne through donating some unused medication. And you may or may not know, but the infertility community is pretty wide on Instagram. And so that was our connection. And since then, we have been friends and been able to follow each other's journey. So that's been
Hmm.
really, really cool.
Yeah.
Um, so I know a lot about your story, but I don't know everything. And I know a lot of women are going to learn a lot listening to you and to be encouraged by your story because you have one that it's so encouraging to other women who are in this battle, in this fight. So
Yeah.
let's
Thank
take
you.
it back. Yeah, let's take it to the beginning, where you just found out or you just realized in the beginning of this process that you would possibly need help. How old were you? How did you know? Did you know all of that?
Yeah. So I started out always having really bad periods, which led to the doctor saying you probably have endometriosis. One day you'll have your surgery, and that day came. And they found a lot of endometriosis. They did the laser laparoscopy, and so the doctor, I remember him saying, "You will probably always need to have help to get pregnant." And I thought, okay, I don't know what that help is, but then down the line, in I guess 11 years later, that was 2009, or I guess not 11 years later, about 8 years later, my husband and I met, or we're talking about having a child, but he himself had a vasectomy. I have endometriosis, which meant we needed help. So we didn't even know at the time that we could have a biological child, but I knew that I always wanted to be a mom. So we looked into it, found out that ICSI was an option, which is where they literally go in and take his sperm and match my egg and put it together, and science does its thing. And then hopefully you have an embryo or two. So we did that. And I was 35 at the time. And so all the factors, the endometriosis, the age, his vasectomy, and all that, we did one round, and we got pregnant. And just to kind of back up to our round, we transferred three embryos. One was good, the others were poor quality. We ended up getting pregnant with twins. Saw the heartbeats, and then something one day just did not feel right, and I asked to get checked out, and found out we had lost a twin. And that in itself is crazy, having one and just wondering, we worked so hard to get there. I kind of glossed over how much work it was to get there for the first round. But yeah, I could keep going on about that.
Yeah, I bet. Did you skip just to the IVF? Did you do any IUIs?
We didn't. It's interesting. If you have ever had a vasectomy, then the sperm is considered immature. And it's immature where it won't, they say, break through the wall of the egg. So you have to, ICSI was our only option. And at first we thought we didn't have
Gotcha.
any options for a biological child between both of us. But in meeting with the doctors and finding out that IVF was actually easier than my husband reversing it, waiting, hoping it works. In ways the doctors can kind of manipulate the medicine they give you for IVF to get the most amount of eggs. And so that was where we decided to start. And when I say easy option, it's not an easy option. It's very
Yeah.
difficult, but that's where we decided to do it. And I was like, whatever I need to do to be a mom was my goal. So
Right. Well, one thing that I've learned about you is that you've had that attitude. Like whatever needs to happen, we're just going to keep moving forward.
totally, yeah. And I'm a teacher, and so I've always felt like I'm like everyone's mom as they're going through my, second grade or first grade
Yeah.
classroom, and I'm like, it's my time to be a mom. And
Yeah.
yeah, so whatever it takes. And that's just, yeah, kind of
Yeah.
been our motto.
So take us back to that cycle 1. So what take us through that. Like,
So we did the initial consultation, found out everything that we needed in regards to the clinic we were going to choose. We stuck with the same clinic for all of our cycles, which has been 5. And our clinic is Poma Fertility in Kirkland, Washington. And I can't say enough nice things about the clinic. At the time, we were interested in the fact that the clinic was a little on the smaller side. Reviews were good. They seemed more affordable than other clinics. They did things differently. They do consults 1 month, and then they do, I guess, the procedures. And so in a way, they cut costs that way, which then made it easier for us to afford it. And that was their whole thing. They're like, we are here to create life, not charge a ton. Still expensive, but they have options, and they're just, when you find a doctor that you love, you know what it's like, and you just stick with them,
for
whatever it
sure.
takes. So,
I totally agree. I totally agree. That's great. That's
mhm.
awesome.
Yeah,
So
it took,
you go ahead.
I was going to say, it took months when we went to the initial consultation, which seems to never be covered by insurance at all. We found out that my husband's insurance covered a tiny bit after we've maxed out our out-of-pocket deductibles and all of that. They paid for a little bit, paid for some medication. It was very difficult, that process. And there's all
Yeah,
these hoops. If that's even a thing, look at that before you do your consultation, because there's so many ways to void that coverage if you don't seek the approval first. So we had to do all that.
mm,
And then we jumped in. I had no idea what we were doing, and I'm terrified of shots. And my mom is a nurse, and luckily she did literally all of our shots in the beginning if my husband wasn't able to do them, which was in the beginning most of the case.
mhm.
So yeah, after our son was born, and we decided we running out of time. I'm edging towards 40, and we wanted to do this again. That's when I got into this Instagram community. Are there people like me, and who are these people? And I just need some guidance. At that point, the cost was a huge obstacle, I guess. How are we going to afford this? What are other people doing? So that's what led me to Instagram, and then that's what connected me to you.
That's so cool. This the community has been so helpful. And what I have told women, plug in, because you will need the support, especially there. I talk to most women who aren't sharing their story or who is feeling shameful or they're just not ready to come out with the issues that they're facing, and so to be able to do that kind of behind closed doors and amongst a community of women who are pretty much feeling the same way, it's really really it's powerful, because for somebody who's hurting and who's so low and feels they're just in the dark, and to be able to have some light shed on them through this community, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I did feel all of those feelings, and then of course adding loss on top of that. I didn't know, even if I know that I wanted to add a sibling, but I just didn't know if this was something that I could even go through again. It was very hard. And my account has always been separate from my personal Instagram, I guess, because I just feel like after being part of this community, everyone in the community understands, or they are willing to do what it takes to understand. Um, I really just didn't want any bias, any judgment, any, questions from friends or family. I just kind of wanted to have a safe space. And so my Instagram was a safe spot for me. It, I mean, I guess I could say it is still private in essence. I don't have my friends and my family a part of it, because that's I guess, not my audience. That's not my reason for that Instagram account. And just being able to see that I'm, I mean, one of eight, but that there are so many of us in the same spots, different spots, scared, been through it.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And chances are a lot of women are able to relate to you or to anybody who's speaking in the community.
Yeah. And I
So go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, I really feel like, I mean, we ended up doing 5 rounds of IVF, and I don't think we would have gotten to 5 rounds without the support of the community. And definitely the way that we met was through medication donation. And when I
Mhm.
had found out, I mean, there's the cost of IVF, there's the actual process, and then there's the medication. And the medication can be just as expensive as the procedure, if not more. And so there's no way that we could have financially afforded to do probably round 4 and 5 had we have not offset that by saving. And I mean, if you plug in to the community, there are people who donate unused medication, not used. Our doctors approved it as long as it came from the United States and it wasn't used and it wasn't expired. They were okay with us using it. And of course, certain medications need to be stored in certain ways. And so once I found that out, it was just like a challenge. What can I cross off my list and find? And with that promise of I will give back whatever I'm not using or whenever I can. And it's just kind of this chain of giving amongst this community that is like incredible. So
I agree. It's been so cool to see. Normally I wouldn't have thought that that was something that, people did, but my fertility clinic actually encouraged whatever unused meds that I have to bring it back to the office or give it to someone who is in need of it. So I understand, everyone is different and some people will say absolutely not. Um, but like you said, not expired, unopened, local or in the US. And so I just felt like it was the right thing to do. And, I talked to a lot of women, and for me also, you spend thousands of dollars on this medication and it's just sitting going bad. And you think about, man, I would have loved to have somebody, pour into me or help me, in order for
yeah.
me to build my family. So to be able to send, it to someone else who's in need of it, you're right. Like it does create this like, giving and giving and giving. And how you can pass that love or, just that giving, it just feels good to you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wish that I knew so much the first time I did this, because I would have done a lot of things differently, especially in terms of medication. I didn't shop around and say, oh, there's a little coverage for my husband's insurance. And,
Mhm.
they charged max out of pocket. And then, I mean, I have a post about how you can save so much money on Menopur, and just finding out that you could save thousands of dollars by just calling a different pharmacy, not just the one that was prescribed to you or the first one that you call. I mean, those are gold too. But to be able to give to anyone, because people will reach out and just, either connect you with someone, which is how we got connected. You knew
Mhm.
someone that I knew, and she just she'd done that a couple times too, and it was like amazing. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so good at this. I mean, it doesn't take much to put a post asking, but it also doesn't take much to reach out and ask someone to do that for you if you're uncomfortable. But
For sure.
I can't talk enough about that. And I mean, I've helped women now too. They'll say, do you know anyone? In fact, I still have some Crinone, which is crazy that I still have it, because it's like $30 each time. But that was another thing I found out. You could go to the manufacturer and you could essentially apply, and based on income they could gift it to you. And so these applicators that are $30 out of pocket, or 35 with my insurance for one applicator, which is the expensive alternate to the PIO oil.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
That's
so
that's
much.
really
So,
important. That's really important that you say that because it is so expensive. And to know that we have options because it's true. It's like for me, my doctor or my nurse, the staff, they recommended one company. But really, there are so many different companies that you
mhm,
can choose from. So that's really
yeah,
good. Um, so for those who want to know, so after your first cycle,
yes.
you had your son and then give us like, okay, after that, how much time had wasted or how much time had gone by that you were like, okay, I know you said that age was a factor.
Yeah.
When did you go back into it? And then like from cycle to cycle to cycle, like was it nonstop? Was there space? Tell us the
Yeah,
rest.
so we we didn't necessarily say like this is how much time we should wait. What was dictated was simply we knew that we'd have a lot of out of pocket expenses, so we were targeting January to start again. And but of course that's all dictated on your body. And so we knew that my husband's employer, and when I say there's coverage, they have like this lifetime maximum, and they can cover some things, like, for example, some of like your blood work and things like that, but maybe they don't cover this, or maybe they'll cover certain parts. It wasn't like, um, he did not work for Microsoft or like a big giant company that has like what I've heard are like amazing benefits. They just happened to be there, which
Mhm.
is just crazy because I'm a public school teacher and my benefits offered nothing. So we were like, let's just take whatever we can get. Let's start in January so we can max out that deductible. And then we started December, January, and our first or our second round, but our first that year was January, and it was a day 5. I thought, everything's the same as last time. It worked the first time, this has got to work, and it didn't. And
I mean, that's gotta be well, I don't wanna say it's worse, but that just it messes with your mind, right? Because it
yeah,
happened the first time and you're thinking, I mean, you initially had twins. You're thinking, okay,
yeah,
well, the chances of it happening again are pretty good. And
yeah.
it just goes to show that like it's so unpredictable.
It's so unpredictable. And we had these, the first my son day 3 embryos. We had more embryos that looked better. Day 5, all those things you wanted, it just kind of seemed like the perfect cycle, and then it failed. And our clinic, as long as they verified that you're not pregnant and so you don't have a beta, and they did their every other month cycle. So we did January, then we were able to skip through February, and then March again. So then March, same thing. We just had to keep going. And it was all of those. I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say a lot of our decisions were financially driven. We had already paid so much out of pocket. At that point, I mean, we had money. I had sold my condo that I had lived in as a single person for a while. We paid down some debt. We put money aside for IVF. We put money aside to PGS test. And then, man, we had to, say, is that where we want to put our money? This didn't work. We had expected. So we did it again. And the thing is, I always got a ton of eggs. And then I could get like 23 eggs, and then we would have maybe 15 that fertilized, and then that number was like 7, and then it dwindled. And every single time, so now we're talking March, this is our third round, our doctors had always said these embryos are poor quality for tons of reasons, I'm sure, but you have to dig in deeper to find out why.
Well, let's touch on that. Could
Yeah.
it what are the factors? Could it have been the vasectomy? Could it be just low, like I guess poor egg quality, if that could possibly be a thing? What are
Yeah.
the factors you're
Yeah.
possibly looking at?
Age, they said, age is a huge factor.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're born with the eggs you'll ever have. So getting to
Right.
be, 37 at this rate, and based on how old my body thinks I am, um,
Right.
I can say that because I had endometriosis, or I do, and it's so bad. One of the things that I did not take birth control for years, traditional, the pill. I just got a headache. So I used like NuvaRing. I had, oh gosh, what is that? the, I
The
cannot,
shot?
the IUD.
Oh,
Yeah, the
gotcha.
IUD, just for years, because they said if you don't have as many periods, obviously it will be less painful with endometriosis, but that could make it easier. This is just what a doctor had said, to get pregnant. And so whatever it takes to, preserve what I could. But yeah, I think all things considered, the vasectomy could, again, we'd have to test for male factor if that was a thing. For me, my husband had 2 children before we were together. So I, thought, well, at least it's probably not male. But that's,
Yeah.
that's just my guess. But
Right.
yeah, I think a lot of it was probably me, which was another like pushing, and every year that I would continue to wait is just another year of less eggs, I guess. So we just kept
Right.
going, and then at this third cycle we found out that my husband was going to be losing his job later that year. But they if he stayed with the company, obviously he'd keep his benefits, but there was benefits financially to staying with the company for a little longer. So now we had this like, when is his last day? And so again, that was the just got to push through. And I mean, everything was sad. Everything, was hard to process. Having the community posting something, just having somebody just reach out and say something, as cheesy as it sounds, to have, which doesn't sound cheesy at all, but for strangers who don't even know me to take the time to tell me, that things are going to be okay, and just positive messages, things that I couldn't get from friends and family because they didn't know what was going on,
Yeah.
which was just hard to explain sometimes. Answering too many questions about that was hard too, when you know
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
predictable responses come out. But yeah, so there was this, we got to do it again. So March happened. We did not get pregnant again. And so then it was just more like, depression, devastation. Like, is this going to happen? Now, at this point, if we were to have done a fourth round, we did not have money to PGS test, which was another thing, because what if this time we get these embryos and we want to test them? And
Yeah.
so that was round 3. And at that
Wow.
point, I mean, I can't even think about how much money out of pocket at that point we were at. But that's when I had found out about, I guess about right before that round is when I found out that we could get donated medicine. So that was a little bit, that third round. And then the fourth round, I'm like, okay, if I can get more donated medication, I can then afford to do another round, which brings us to the next month. And so that was May. And that was another ton of eggs fertilized. By the end of it, we had just a few. And I'll say, based on my age and the quality, we were able to transfer anywhere from 3 to 4 at a time, which whenever people ask me, they're like, that's so many. You're definitely going to have twins. But there's actually reasons that our doctor explained as to why we would transfer so many. Yes, it gives you a better odd at bringing home a baby, but it doesn't necessarily mean twins at all. And at this point, when you have 4 embryos and you're told to pick 3, that just wasn't as, my husband and I did not want to be that person. We thought 4 were picked for us, right? And so we were just going to take that leap of faith. And at some
Wow.
point we would transfer 3, but no matter what the quality is. And so that fourth round, we transferred our embryos. That was another day 3. And we did get pregnant. And it was that over the moon joy, everything. And yeah, that did not last very long. We saw the heartbeat again, which is just the worst, after seeing a heartbeat and then going back, and there is no heartbeat. This was, I had a bleed and we were in the emergency room. And at that point, they couldn't, it was early, but they couldn't locate the fetal pole or the yolk sac. So we went to our doctor who confirmed that we had lost that pregnancy. And that was just like devastation. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. My heart goes out to you because I know that that's so hard. So you had one pregnancy out of how many embryos? 3 or 4 that were transferred?
That was 3 that
That was
round. We
3.
transferred
Okay.
3. So we had, yeah, I mean,
One.
based on our beta number, um, that's all we had because they could not,
Okay.
they could only see the one. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I
Okay.
don't, at that point, I don't believe we had twins. And there's so much around loss with IVF and, you know, IUD and things like that. And when it happened, yes, it was hard. And it was almost, I could have taken months and years to mourn, and I still do. But we had this, you know, we're in the thick of it, right? And my husband's going to lose his job. We're going to lose whatever little benefits. We just had to keep going. And at that rate, we just said this is going to be our last round. And we had enough donated medication to utilize for that last round, which was amazing. And because we'd exhausted so much of our out of pocket, we had a little bit more coverage on that last round. Still expensive and still tons of things that were not paid for, but this was our Hail Mary. Gotta do it. I remember we were going to Disneyland with the teenagers and our, at this point, 1.5-year-old, and our my husband's kids are getting older, and this is our last little trip. I needed something to clear my mind, just something positive. And in a way, I thought we saved some money from medication. We were able to add a little to our fund to go do something. It was just, we just needed to get away and clear our mind. And we left on the 5th of July. I started my period that day. I called the clinic. I'm like, I can't make baseline. And they said, well, if you're okay moving forward, we can't check to see if your body's ready. And I, leap of faith, sure. So
Wow.
came back, jumped right in, and then round 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So it's like it's crazy. How old was your son when you went to cycle 2? Do you remember?
So he was born in December, and then this was December, January. So it was just, we didn't wait long. Yeah. And there's no
Wow.
magical, we weren't looking for like a certain amount. I just knew whenever we did this for financial reasons, we have to start January to maximize our
Right.
deductibles, things like that. And
Right.
so,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, gosh, I know every woman's different, but and obviously your motivation there, it's clear what your motivation was. But God, I'm so much wired like you, where I'm just like, okay, focus. What is it? What's the end
Yeah.
goal? Yeah, yeah, it hurts. Yeah, it's painful, but I want to keep going. Like that's
Hmm.
all that's going to make me feel better right now versus, and there's no right or wrong,
Hmm.
but somebody who's just like, no, I've got to process and I've got to take the
Yeah.
time. But I understand, girl, I'm
Yeah.
37. I'm going to be 38 in a couple months and I still have a couple of embryos, to go. So for me, I totally get it. It's like, all right, what's next? We got to keep going.
Yeah, my husband, I mean, like I mentioned, I'm a teacher. And so this was July. And he's like, why don't you just take this cycle off? You're not teaching. It's summer. Just relax. And I'm like, no way. This is even better. I don't have to get a sub to go teach my kids. And just the amount of appointments and excuses you have
Right.
to make. And, so many people in general that count on you, whether you're, face to face with people. So I was like, no, we have to. It's just my heart was saying we have to go. This is our last, like I said, our Hail Mary. We transferred 4. And this time it was different. We were told that our embryos, first of all, we got 20 something embryos and most all
Mhm.
of them fertilized. So that was a little better. But then we were told that they were I guess, progressing fast is the way that they explain it. I'm like, oh, that's great, right? Because our day 3 embryos were going really slow, and they're like, no, that's not good. And I don't really understand why. Just didn't quite make sense. But then we just kept losing embryos, and they wanted to wait till day 5, and I knew that from my very first cycle with the 3-day, I was so hung up on, being so sad that we were going to do a 3-day, and I don't know anyone who's done a 3-day. And when I read this, the doctors want 5 days so they can watch and they can pick the best. Well, I had an embryologist tell me that your body is the best incubator for your embryos. And that was my first round. I never forgot that, because my son, when he was born, beautiful, there was nothing wrong with him. If we look at these embryos and say they're ugly looking embryos, that's just what they look like on the outside, which is like judging a book by its cover. We weren't able to send those embryos off to test because it was use them or lose them. So same situation, but I had said, can we please do a day 3? And they, went back and forth, and they said, if that's what you want, and that's what I wanted. So we transferred 4, and we had one that was like a 3, and the rest were 2 or 1s. And that was our Hail Mary. And so I remember I could never not test as much as I wanted to. I also have to know, right, the good or the bad. And I tell myself I'm testing out the trigger shot, right? All those things
Right.
we say. And we were out of town, and I had just brought 2 little cheapy, I'll just try it. And we were in a hotel, and with our teenagers, and I just went out into the lobby bathroom, and I just had to know. And then I saw the faintest line, and I just thought, is this happening?
And you're looking at it and you're like, is
Yeah.
this me? Wait a minute. Wait, is it there?
Yeah.
Right?
And I said, I will test, but I didn't want to test so quickly, because this was very quickly. This was just a few days. And I remember actually talking to you when we were driving there, and I was just saying, I want to test, and, I'm leaving it up to the universe to make this happen or not. And I only brought 2 tests, right? Those cheap 100-pack that you can buy. And then it was the faintest line, and I just felt good, and I'll try one more time in the morning, and then, wait till I get home. And that was like the longest car ride. And so then when we went to the clinic, we had an idea, right? But we'd been here before, right? So we've lost, and then we've been pregnant and lost. So everything's scary. It doesn't just stop once you get pregnant. And I will never forget that my husband went with me, and we were there, and the doctor said, oh, look, there's the heartbeat. And we were so happy. And he said, and look, there's another. And
Wow.
Oh my gosh, I was like tunnel vision staring at the screen. And I remember my husband saying, is there any more? It was crazy, because
Wow.
in a way it was deja vu. This has happened. We've had multiples. So
Wow.
that,
So it's like that cycle 1, you first started and you had the twins, and you lost one. And then your very last cycle, it's the Hail Mary, and here you are again, and you have twins. It's kind of incredible the way things just kind of came back around.
yeah. And it's crazy, because maybe had we've had those twins in the beginning, would we have these babies? I also,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure many listeners can relate, but every time I went to the bathroom, I was always like looking, is there blood? Is there blood? And it's like a crazy addiction, and it's kind of like a mind bender, I guess.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And then I think it was like 13 weeks, we had a bleed, and it just, there was no waiting. I had to take myself to the emergency room. My husband, it was homecoming for the teenagers. And so we were going to see the teenagers coming over and dressed up, and I'm bleeding. So I had to take myself to the emergency room, and just, it was the scariest hours of my life, only to find out there's no reason for your bleed. Check with the doctor. We see heartbeats. I mean, I'm talking about this, but I'm like reliving it in my mind, and just the feelings and like the
Ugh.
scared, nervous. Ugh. So
Yeah, you talking about it brings me back to it because at 12 weeks I started bleeding. And I think it was just because I got off of the progesterone. That's the only thing it could amount to.
yeah,
When you get off the PIOs.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, going to the emergency room and just waiting and waiting and waiting for them to do a, ultrasound. And then thank God to find out that everything's okay. But it's like,
Hmm.
oh, but then you're right. Like after that, then you're checking and you have this like trauma every time you go to the bathroom and you're hoping and wishing that everything is okay. And it's hard.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
And
hard.
in regards, now that you mentioned that too, because they thought, oh, subchronic hemorrhaging or something. Nope, it wasn't
Yeah.
anything. And so about 13 weeks, I took the Crinone, which is the vaginal insert cream gel, and I insisted on, with this pregnancy, I said I want to take one in the morning and one in the afternoon. It was basically a double dose, just because we had been here and we'd done all these things, and we had taken the Crinone and then lost the pregnancy. And the doctor said, sure. And because they're $30 each, right? So $60 a
Mm.
day for the 12 weeks, which is, a couple weeks less because in the beginning, but having that covered by Allergen, which was the company that made that, made it affordable. But I really think that that extra progesterone probably supported my pregnancy. And now that you mentioned that, maybe it had something to do with 13 weeks if I had so much. And then, but even the doctors didn't, you know, come up with that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and so speed forward through this pregnancy, which was crazy. I mean, I think, and I don't even know if I don't even think I put this on my story because it was so hard. But both of my pregnancies, I had gestational diabetes. And so this
Mm.
round, they wanted to check quickly and early. So, like 12 weeks, they checked and said, yep, you're going to take
Oh,
medication.
I didn't realize that you were doing them back to back to back. I
Hmm.
remember you going into your fourth one and then, like, okay, that didn't work out in the end. So now we're going to go into our fifth one. But wow, like, I was so excited about others hearing your story because it shows so much just commitment and grit. And like I said, everybody's different and everybody chooses to do it differently. But one thing that I have noticed time after time is when women continue to fight for for building their family, how whatever that looks like, at some point or another, it happens,
Hmm.
versus just, it not happening. So,
Yeah.
I just I can't help but commend you, I mean, it's like
Right.
you now have these three precious beautiful baby boys,
Yeah.
and your family it wouldn't have happened if you didn't fight as hard, both of you didn't fight as
No.
hard as you did. So we've touched on some of it, but you know if you could have told yourself anything, before going into this process, that could have helped you more or hurt you or whatever, would you say anything that would have changed in the process or how you went
Yes.
about things?
So many things. The first and foremost is just creating that plan. And I mean, I had spreadsheets. This pharmacy costs this much, and this and this, and um, all of that research is amazing. But if you're doing research, there's people who have already done that research. So reaching out to people, connecting. I've had several people who have asked about donated medication, but they're afraid to ask, or they're not quite sure, or they don't know where to start. So starting anywhere, reaching out. The thing that I think about this community is it's like a family that honestly I've never had the connection with so many people from literally all around the world, in the same boat. All, I've never had a bad experience really with anyone. I had someone who was asking about medication once, and she literally thought what I had available to give was not true. And she's, there's no way that you're giving this medication away, and what's the catch or whatever. And that was the weirdest thing. And I'm like, no, there's no catch. It's just I'm doing what others did for me. I had medication left over my first cycle, and I had no idea that giving this medication was a thing. So there's so much to unpack with IVF, that there's so many people who've done it over and over and over. I like to think of myself as like a veteran. But then again, there's aspects that I haven't been a part of, right? Things we didn't have to do. We were not able to do IUI, which is sometimes first step before IVF. But just research. The answers are out there. Ask people. I love when people ask me questions about what I did, because I want to help anybody who wants to, have the family that I wanted. And like you said, I mean, it's hard to say that just it'll happen, but I mean, just keep going. I mean, I didn't let myself get to the point. It's almost, I became a little numb. Um, and I just had to focus, and here's the goal, and this is what I want. And it's not endless money that I had, and it wasn't necessarily affordable. And I'll say too, I sold my condo, and I had made money, and we used that to pay our debt down and to set money aside. And we still have debt. We are renting. We're not buying. We had to give up so much, but it's, I can't compare it to anything. I will rent for the rest of my life if I had to, if that meant that I could have my boys. And everything about the experience of having these boys is just, it just feels more than, when you've worked so hard or you've done so much. And one day I'll get to tell them how hard I worked for them and their dad and their nana. And yeah, it's just that the grit is just, there was no other way. I couldn't just not or wait. Emotionally, I had to keep going.
Is there anything that you would tell someone going into infertility treatments, or somebody who just found out they have infertility, that maybe you didn't touch on before? What could help in support of them going into these challenges they're about to face? What can help them, maybe emotionally,
Yeah.
or mentally?
Definitely don't compare your situation to anybody's,
Mhm.
because we're all different. That's first and foremost. I mean, there's so many things that in retrospect I could have done first that maybe would have made less. Is it ERA? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Where they find out the exact time. I That's something that I think is really important that I didn't do. But in thinking back, all of my successful transfers had happened in the afternoon. The ones that did not work at
Mm.
all were in the morning. And I'm like, wow, okay.
Oh,
So that's science. So I guess let science work in your benefit and explore all those options, especially with the medication. I mean, I'm talking um, thousands of dollars, upwards to like 8 to 10,000 per cycle
wow.
is what medication can cost. And if you don't check out where you can buy them, you could easily pay 1,000 more for something that you didn't need to. And then that's crazy. So really, I would say, research, reach out. There's tons of
Yeah.
people who've done this research, but find that community. And I think the IVF community is perfect. I mean, I'm watching people who went through this journey with me, like yourself, and we made it to the other side, I guess. And now that's a whole other journey. And when I think about the fact that I've done this twice, I, have friends who are at that stage where they're like, okay, we're ready to do it again. And I just remember how hard it was just thinking about doing it again. And then all those other times, and just personally give yourself grace talk to a therapist if that's an option.
Mhm.
Um, it was hard between my husband and I. I mean, he would just see you're in pain. I mean, at the point where you're about to have your eggs retrieved, I mean, it's physically hard and it hurts and it's
Yes.
painful. Find that support system. I feel like I kind of lost connection with friends and family for that one full year where we did 4 cycles, because it's hard to commit to things. And we did not share those with our teenagers, right? So we had, it wasn't a shame thing. It was just, if this doesn't work and we can't produce a sibling, we don't want that
Yeah.
burden to fall on them. And it's just more questions to answer. I'm a very private person. So we just had so many, little pieces to fit in our
Yeah.
puzzle. But yeah, just reaching
Wow.
out, I guess, and
Yeah.
whoever that could be, community, therapist, friend, family.
Yes, that's so good. All of that is so good. Thank you so much, Dan. I know a lot of women are going to get so much from hearing your story. So I appreciate your
Thanks.
time.
Yeah.
I know you're busy with
Thank you
3
for
little
having
ones.
me.